What's something that you've gone through where you've had to struggle?
What have I not gone through?
I know you that question's actually like, fuck, you got all kinds of challenge you've had to overcome in your previous profession,
Yeah,
right? Being a pro skater.
yeah,
Before you were a pro, I'm sure there was its own struggle.
yeah,
And then afterwards, it's like that's a switch of life.
yeah. I think, man, I think, I mean, I'll talk about skateboarding,
Okay.
because that's been, um, a common, that's been something that's been part of my life since I've been, very young, from a very young age. So, um, I think the thing that I struggled with the most was not knowing what to do after, it's like there's this effort to, force my way into being part of this thing, which
Yeah.
was, like the pro skateboarding or just the skateboarding community, which then became, like the professional skateboarding community. And really not having much thought outside that, it was like I just want to be a part of this, right?
Mhm.
And then reaching a stature within it in a period of time where I was at the very top,
Yeah, you were skater of the year.
and I think because of where I came from, I really struggled with that time. I struggled with reaching that. I struggled with the
Where did you come
success.
from for those who might not know?
Well, I came from,
Because it's a different audience.
yeah, so I came from, I mean, just speaking in, uh, I came from obscurity, you know what I'm saying,
Okay.
basically. So I guess what point I'm trying to make is like,
It's not from a place, it's just obscurity because
yeah,
people can relate to
well, I
that.
mean, obscurity in the sense that like, my as a child, typically I think as you develop as a young person, through elementary school and junior high and high school, most kids um experience relative stability. I would say a major not maybe not a ma- I don't know. I don't know what the statistics are, but I think most people they like have a group of people that they kind of grow up with like, specific. I don't know. I just feel like my childhood wasn't like that, It's like
What was your childhood like?
my on my father's side, there were people in my family who were involved with the Iranian Revolution in
Okay.
1979. Certain members of my family were, um, kicked out of the United States during the Carter administration.
Oh, wow.
My connection to them through my dad's side of the family, we suffered because of that, because there was a lot of hostility towards anyone who was from Iran because of what was being
And you this is
portrayed
were
in the
you in San
media.
Jose during that time?
No, I lived in Washington, D.C.
Oh, shit.
So I actually was, I mean, I was front and center. I was at the Iranian embassy.
Yeah.
I was here. I was exposed to.
How old were you at that time?
I was, well, 1979. I was, I don't know, 7
So
or
you
8.
remember.
Yeah, I was a young kid. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw all kinds of stuff that was, you know, for a child, it was just kind of traumatizing, but without
Yeah.
knowing, So anyhow, yeah, it's like one day I was at elementary school and my dad showed up and my parents were divorced, so my mom had already moved to Los Angeles and we were on a plane. Never even went back to my house.
Oh, you're
Just
kidding.
no, just on a plane And then next thing I know, we're in London, and we're the flights to Iran are canceled or whatever. So we're on our way to go to Iran during this
I've never heard this story, so I didn't.
oh
I'm
yeah.
shocked.
So
Yeah, I've never
yeah,
heard
so
this.
so we did that, so anyhow, it's interesting. My dad, he has these little papers. They're written in Farsi. So
Okay.
I just remember waking up in the middle of the night and I could tell my dad was stressed,
Okay.
to say the least. And here we are in London on a layover overnight. And so I wake up and my dad asked me, he's like, pick a hand. So I pick a
Okay.
hand and boom, the paper that I picked said Iran. So it was like either it said Iran or go back to the US. That was the two
Okay.
options. So we ended up in Iran. So I lived in Iran during that time in 1979.
So how'd you get back?
So, you know, well, you don't know, but
No, I don't know.
so basically some family members on my dad's side just said, you don't belong here. Your kids shouldn't be here. You know,
Because it's you and your sister.
my brother, just my
Oh,
brother.
your sister wasn't born yet?
No, so I have two stepsisters.
Oh, I didn't know they were your
Yeah,
stepsisters.
so they come later on. So anyhow, you know, um I don't know. I don't know how I mean, we're American citizens. We're born here, my brother and I, but I don't know that somehow I think the day before we were supposed to leave to go to Germany, the government of Iran was like, you can't go anywhere. You're not leaving.
And your mom's in Los Angeles during this.
Yeah. So that wasn't to us, that was to my dad.
Okay.
I remember being over there like taking passport photos and all this stuff. And I don't know, it was just a trip,
Passport for what
I don't
country, though?
for the
Oh,
US.
okay.
Yeah. So we were traveling back to the intention was to come back. So we ended up in so the following day, I don't know, somehow we made it onto a plane and we kind of escaped and ended up in Germany
Why Germany?
because we couldn't come back to the US.
And this was in 79 or 80?
79.
79.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we couldn't come back. And then finally my brother and I could come back, but it was like, where do we come back to? You know what I'm saying?
You'd have to go to your mom, right?
No, because I hadn't seen my mom in years. I hadn't seen my mom since I was 2, you know?
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So anyhow, we ended up back. We were in Germany. We were in a hotel. The whole hotel from floor to ceiling was full of refugees from Iran. The whole thing. There
Okay.
was not one room that wasn't
And were you paying
someone
for
from.
these rooms? Or were
Yeah,
they
we had to.
it's like an asylum?
Yeah, no, we had to. Yeah, you had to pay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like you paid to stay somewhere.
I didn't know maybe they did some sort of
I don't think so, but so yeah, eventually my dad sent us back, my brother and I, and we lived with a friend
in DC.
in Washington D.C. until finally the U.S. government allowed my dad to come back to the United States, and then we moved to California.
San Jose.
We moved to not to San Jose, but we moved to the Bay Area.
Northern California.
Yeah,
Okay.
Northern California.
Damn.
Yeah, so my dad,
And that's when you
we flew to California. My dad had my brother and I and $200 in his pocket, and that's it. And we had some family out here on
and
the West
so how do you
Coast.
make a living?
I don't know. He ended up getting a job,
Okay.
you know, working at different jobs, and then eventually met, just met some other, met people, and then he started his own businesses again, and yeah.
What business?
So back in the DC, my dad was in the office supply business, and he had several stores around like Georgetown, Crystal City, um trying to think of where else. But anyhow,
Tyson?
they were basically like Office Depots or
Oh, okay.
Staples, like that type of store. I mean, he sold copiers and pen. I mean, you could get like, cheap pens to like the Mont Blanc, like really nice
Yeah,
writing,
yeah.
all everything, all that stuff. In the metro down in Crystal City, he had a store. It was just called Modern Pens. It was like almost like a kiosk. I mean, it was tiny, about a third of the size of this room, but people would just walk by and it was so busy. It was like a counter that you could walk behind and a wall full of pens. And he had all the really nice pens locked in a counter, like the Mont
Yeah.
Blancs and all, because, it's Washington, D.C. So,
Well, through my first time with money, I actually had a pin collection, so I
oh,
know
okay.
exactly what
Okay.
before I
Nice.
had to sell them all.
Yeah. So, anyhow, yeah. So, yeah, he was in that business and then he started that business again out here
Wow.
in California. And then he had met someone who was had a French bakery,
Okay.
and then he got interested in that. So then he started a French bakery and cafe business called Our Daily Bread. And I think at one time we had 5 of those
In the
around.
Northern California area?
Yeah, and then you know, through all that, it distilled back down to one main location that did really well.
And so
And
that's the obscurity that you're talking about when you say breaking into skateboarding.
well, yeah, I think what I mean by obscurity is like I always felt like an outsider. You know what I'm saying?
In
Like
an outsider sport or just in general?
just in general, like even amongst my peers, like when I went to school, like I just had a hard time connecting,
Okay.
I felt with the people around me. So when I really fell in love with skateboarding, I mean, at a young age, I just kind of continued. It just kept presenting itself to me, So when we moved to California, in the 80s, like early to mid 80s, skateboarding started to get popular
I
with,
remember.
young kids. And, I was that age. I was like, and I already liked skateboarding. So when I saw the new skateboards that were wider with the big wheels and trucks
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all the stuff like rails and nose guard, I was like, man, that's so cool. And of course, I wanted one. And yeah, I ended up getting a board. I must have been in fifth grade or something, fourth or fifth grade.
What was your
So
first board?
I got a Vision Shredder 10,
Okay.
and it had Sims City Streets on it and independent trucks, and it had all it had the nose guard and the rails and the tail and everything.
Sims. So was Rocco on Sims then?
Probably,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I had no idea.
I got you. Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know, anybody from.
Well, videos were hard to find back then, man.
Yeah, so I ended up seeing a video. There were these kids, Mark and I can't remember the other kid's name. They were brothers, Mark Hutton.
Okay.
And I remember, I think they had a video, and it might have been a copy of like Terror at Tahoe,
There at Tahoe. Was
which
that
was
like the Duel at Diablo style vert ramp comp?
yeah, it was up in Tahoe, and it was like, I just remember, I was just talking about this the other day because I was doing an interview for the Caballero movie.
Oh yeah.
It was like the first
He's
time
doing
I
TikTok.
noticed like who all these, there were the guys and they're pros, and Lance Mountain lighting his tail on fire. And I was like, that's my people. Like I'm
Yeah.
all about that, just, it was just validation. So anyhow, yeah. Um, so yeah, it was, even as a young skater, yeah, I had friends and we skated together, but being successful at skating, or I think getting sponsored and progressing in that, it actually, that also separated me from my friends because that wasn't happening for everybody.
Well, at the time that you were coming up, skating was getting harder.
It was getting harder and it just wasn't happening for everybody. So I
Yeah.
was making every effort that I could to like at least bring like friends of mine that really skated like I did kind of along with me, as much as I could,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Jason Adams, Sean Mendoli,
Okay.
but we ended up, Sean and I ended up on Reel together.
What about Javante?
Well, Javante, yeah, also he's
He
from San
was yeah.
Francisco. We were friends, but we were on Pal together.
Well, I just remember that little bit you guys are in.
Yeah, and we did skate a lot together back then because I'd stay up in San Francisco or he'd be down staying with us in San Jose.
Yeah.
So um anyhow, yeah. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is like the struggle for me was not getting to that point. It was after that point,
So yeah, that's my
you
question.
know, like being accepted into this community. But it's like, I basically got accepted into a community of people that I don't have any connection to, really. You know what I'm saying? Other than just skating.
Share a little more about. I'm curious. What do you mean? I think I know what you mean.
I don't know. It's like when you, I think friendships and relationships, they can, they start a lot of times because of a common interest, but they become close and they become real through the time that you spend together,
Yeah.
and you know, and what you go through, you know, in the relationship with the other person.
And so you didn't have that with your peers in skateboarding? Because I mean,
Mm,
you went on tours with a
I
lot
mean,
of people,
yeah,
so you
but
spent time with them.
yeah, that's true, but it was like, you know, it was always different people. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So
Well,
so
I do
yeah, so it was a lot of times different people, and I didn't make any real connections, is what I'm trying to say. Like I didn't,
at
you know.
all. Well, I know you and
I
Cab are
did.
like
So I
close, right?
yeah, so Cab and I are really close.
But you were never on the same team for anything, were
Well,
you?
we were on PAL together in Vans.
Vans,
Yeah.
but you were only at Vans for a little bit at that time, right? Or was it a
No, I've been
longer
on
break?
Vans my whole, like, even to this day. Like my shoe just came out again.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I saw that.
So
That
I've
was
been on
dope.
Vans for, I mean, I'm not like on their team anymore, but I've been sponsored by Vans or connected to Vans for 38 plus years, you know?
So even when you did the Black Label part, Blackout, you were on Vans then?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, but going back, so Cab you connected with who else?
So, I mean, it's really, you know, I mean, I think part of it was, so to answer the question, like the thing that was the struggle
Yeah,
was, you know, just uh, you know, that all of that leading up to, like, you know, being skater of the year, for example, these were all unconscious in a way. You know what I mean? It was more like,
you weren't trying to become Skate of the Year.
no, it was just like a thing, you know? It's like I just cared about what I was doing and I wanted to be good at it. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's
You know
it.
what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But it led to places that I had no
Like you weren't
uh
trying to be the Godfather of Switch that
yeah,
people call you. Or,
yeah, none of these things, you know,
yeah.
but point I'm trying to make is that I wasn't prepared for what I was getting myself into in a lot of ways, I think emotionally. And yeah, it was hard. It was very difficult, you know. It was a difficult time.
How did you transition? Almost, I mean, as somebody who's been a professional sport, nowhere near as good in my sport as you were in skateboarding,
Mhm.
because it is a culture, it's a lifestyle, especially because it's an individual thing.
Mhm.
You do it with others.
Mhm.
How What was that transition like back into civilization? It almost feels like you're a civilian because now you're saddled. Because you know when you're in your bubble,
Yeah.
you're in a different world.
Mm.
But outside of that, where people are like, I don't give a fuck what you did, skateboarding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But skateboarding, I don't know. It's different now. It translates into things. But I mean, how did you transition into becoming an entrepreneur?
I don't know. I just think you're always just, you just are one. You just,
Well,
you know.
yeah.
I think part of it's in
Nobody'd hire me.
I think part of it's kind of just inherent, you know. I think when I think about myself, my personality, you know, it's, you know, I have a kind of defiant nature,
Yeah, you do.
rebellious, independent kind of spirit. So, um, I just, and the other thing that I've always known about myself is just that I've value my time.
Okay.
So
What do you mean when you say that?
I just mean like it's, I couldn't, there's not enough compensation that I could receive to trade my time to do something that I don't want to do or that
Gotcha.
I'm not interested in.
Yeah, you definitely don't.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, knowing you.
Yeah. So it's like I'm not gonna do, you know. So it's not that I don't have to do things that that I don't like doing or that I'm not interested in, but I just want to control, not, it's not even a control thing. It's just I want to decide if if and when I'm gonna do something. That's all.
So how did you get to that point? I mean, because you've
I've
obviously had to
I've just
struggle.
always been in that point.
You've always been
You
resilient.
know what I mean? And I think part of that nature is why I struggled as a pro skater, because there were certain kind of unspoken sort of like expectations that came with being in that position. And
Okay.
I, in a sense, self-destructed because I was like, I'm not going to do those things. I'm going to do whatever I want. And if whatever I want doesn't conform, it was like I'm basically a
Interesting.
nonconformist. So even to things that I care about, I was like, I'm not conforming to that. Like, I don't want to film your video. I don't want to go, I like to go on tour and go skate and do all that, but I don't want to play I'm not interested in this game. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think you get in your own way?
Oh, big time.
Okay. Okay,
100%.
okay.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was
I'm my worst stumbling block. Yeah, for sure.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, without a doubt.
So how
Yeah.
do you get out of your own way? Because clearly you've had success
Yeah.
in different phases of your life
Mhm. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know.
because
I think getting out of my way has to do with my personal enlightenment and learning and being conscious of that.
I got you.
So there was a time where I was not conscious of it. So if you were to take me back now, the knowledge that I have and the experience that I have and put me back in 1992, I would probably do things differently because I have that experience, but back then I didn't have it. And there was really no one to talk to or to, there weren't really, I mean, there were, Cab's always been a example and a mentor for me, whether I talk to him about stuff or not, just by observation,
Okay.
but
I know you guys are close. At
you
least
know,
that's the way it comes
it's
across when I
just
see
I
you
just
2 interact.
there wasn't like a conscious or intentional conversation with someone like, "Hey, what should I do?" And maybe part of that's pride, you know?
I got you.
For back
Ego?
then, ego, whatever,
Yeah.
just not wanting to look weak or
Well, we grew up in a
look
different time.
ignorant or
No, I
whatever.
got
So,
you.
I mean, it's just one of those things, I think the skateboarding industry at that time, you know, for the level that I was at, which is the level that like the skaters are now, this high level. I mean, it was a lot smaller industry, but people have representation. They have managers and
Yeah,
agents
you were
and
at you were
trainers and
Nija without his paycheck.
yeah, I mean
Or that infrastructure
to
now.
a large degree. So it's like, there's a lot of you know, there was just things that I didn't have any experience with that I had to go through and that was difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was difficult. It's difficult to also like become conscious of something that you care about and love evolving and turning into something other than what you perceive it to be. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So
when you
that's
see the wizard behind the curtain and then it becomes your job too.
yeah, you know what I mean? So these things are all these are all things that can be overcome with like I think good people around you. I don't know. We're fans of racing, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible what these guys do on dirt bikes. They're incredible athletes. A lot of them sacrifice so much, their physical well-being, their
They could die every time they throw their
well,
leg over the bike.
but the point I'm trying to make is like that there's a lot of focus that goes into being that good and there's really no guarantee that you can even stay up there for very long,
Yeah.
right? So these guys that do it for a long time, but the thing that I really have observed and that you see is that, and you hear the guys talk about it, they have a team, you know,
They do, they have a
and
very
and I-
big
and I
support
think that
system.
that's a neat thing. Not that I totally like what skateboarding is now, but I think it's neat that the guys that have the stature that they do have something like that
Yeah,
because it's really helpful to have that just for your own sanity, you know?
I do.
So I didn't have that, and that was hard. That was a struggle, you know?
It's a good place to end it.